Welcome to Season 2 of the South African Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Terence Mentor, and I'm a digital marketer who's realized that since this industry is constantly changing, we need to be constantly learning. And the best way to learn all of the things is to talk to the people who are doing all of the things. And this podcast is just an opportunity to do that. My guest this episode was Justine Nienaber, the co-founder of Punkystarfish Digital Agency. We spoke about the kind of people who could make or break a digital marketing agency and how to make sure you work with and for people who treat you in the very least like a human being. Besides that, Justine gave us 5 big ideas that digital marketers should keep an eye out for in 2025. So hang around with us till the very end when we get into that. This episode is slightly longer than usual, but the conversation with Justine is so great that I didn't want to keep any of it away from you, so let's get right into it. Here's Justine.
Cool. So I am Justine. I am originally from Zimbabwe, and I moved to South Africa to study. Loved it so much that I stayed. And I've been living here for 16 years now. I'm fully South African. I don't really classify myself as a Zimbabwean anymore, unless there's political commentary I need to make. And I run a digital agency called Punkystarfish. We are full service digital agency. We started off, I guess, I worked in like some pretty high powered jobs, which caused me to have a bit of a mentee bee, which wasn't great. And I then moved, and then myself and my partner, my business partner and life partner, were like, let's try this thing. Like, we know what's up. We've both been in pretty senior positions, so let's give it 6 months. And that was 8 years ago. And I think it's kind of working out. I don't know. We'll see. Being an entrepreneur is terrifying. I'm always like, this will be the month that breaks me for the last 8 years.
So the jury is still out on the success of Punkystarfish.
I mean, we have a team now, which makes it a lot more scary. It's not just myself and Mark like hustling. We've kind of doubled year on year in terms of the amount of staff we have and people who work for us and clients and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's see.
I wonder how many marketing agencies have started because of marketers having mental health breakdowns because of the stresses of the job. I'm sure you're not alone in it with having that kind of story.
Listen, if there was something I was going to put money on, it would be that majority of agencies, somebody at some point worked in an agency at a high level or in a brand at a high level, and it was like, no, I can do this and I can do it better and I can do it on my own terms. Or at least that was my thoughts. I mean, I can't always do it on your own terms, but at least I can say no to things now if it doesn't suit me, you know. But yeah, I think it's just very similar to you. Like, when you've been in this space, like, I remember being like one of the first people on Twitter. You do know what I mean? Like, it's when you've grown up with everything. I remember Facebook before there was like ads. You know, like, it's just kind of natural that, like, if you are a digital native and somebody who's been on these platforms for pleasure because we loved it, and then how lucky that it then becomes our jobs and that we get to work in the space, or at least that's how I feel. Like, I genuinely love content. I love the internet and I get to work there. It's great.
I think you definitely see that if you take more than a couple of minutes just to scroll through your LinkedIn account or Punkystarfish's LinkedIn account, you can definitely get that sense of real joy with the creation of content, with engaging with conversations in that way. And I guess maybe that's another reason why people like yourself maybe start their own space. I know that's why I started this podcast, is to kind of improve the culture of the industry, you know, take it away from like the high levels of stress from making content and making campaigns that are really like low level, bottom of the barrel stuff to really content that like we enjoy as well as the audience enjoys and ultimately the client enjoys. So I can see why people can be in a space like you were in, where super stressful, not feeling very fulfilled, not feeling like you're having an impact, to going like, maybe it's time for me to try and change it in my own small way. So right off the bat, very impressive that you were even able to do that. You did mention that you have some clients that you have more than some clients, but you started with a few clients and you became more established. What are those what kind of clients are you servicing? Who are your target clients?
So we don't really have target clients, and this sounds super like up my own asshole to say, but like we work with nice people, and there's like a culture to that. I consider myself like a bit of an empath. I can tell when people are upset, when people don't like things. And I want to work with people who don't make me or my team feel pressurized, stressed, who are asking for unreasonable things that are rude. So, I mean, it's taken a lot. It's taken 8 years to get there, but we kind of work with some big clients. I'm not going to name them, but go to our website; they're all there. But we play a lot in the FMCG space because it's just kind of where we've landed up, and I think we have more of a we're better at the humor side of things, which I think is easier to do in the FMCG space. So our biggest clients play there, but we work on automotive in the automotive space. We work in lubricants. So, like they're not with us anymore, but we work with Elf Lubricants to sponsor if you're into F1. Like that's the only time anybody really knows about Elf. It's really hard to make lubricants sexy.
Well, it depends what kind of lubricants you're talking about, really.
Yeah, exactly. Durex, call us, we can help you out. But we worked with them in the past. We currently still work with actually a new client that we're onboarding next month is our first month with them, called Fuchs Lubricants. FMCG, automotive lubricants. We worked in investing apps. We work in, like, one of our clients, manufacturers of pavers. Another one is a local brand that's fantastic called A1 Sparkling Water. They're locally made like sparkling water that has their own all natural flavorants. We work with a lot of restaurants. We work with, I'm going to feel terrible if I forget someone, coffee shops. We work with quite a big coffee shop franchise. We've worked on Nick Flores. We've worked on My Way. We've worked on it's really diverse. And I love that because I'm not a big believer in I'm as guilty as the next person of scrolling on Instagram and seeing all these gurus telling us niche down and be a specialist and do this while drinking, £5 coffee in the UK. Like, it's a very different market to South Africa. The reality is that I don't think maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think there's enough companies with proper budgets to be like, I only work in health and wellness, So we have a very broad variety of clients, and that makes it interesting every day. Like everything, I was chatting with one of my team members this morning, and we were coming up with like ideas for one of our crypto clients, and then it's on to lubricants. And then we were talking about we were brainstorming ideas around content for cars. And then we go on to, it's just like skincare is what the team's currently shooting, which is why I'm in my back office. It's really diverse, and there's a lot of learnings that you can take from other industries as well. So it's nice to have it diverse.
So just a couple of questions off that. I think the first one that really strikes me is that diversity, which I can for my brain, that really tickles my brain as well, having a range of different things to be talking about and working on. The one problem I can foresee happening is that you then aren't really expert in that particular field that you happen to be talking about. So is there a lot of time that's taken in like onboarding yourself, maybe even onboarding your client and really understanding their product quite deeply? And how do you manage to do that with that array of clients that you have?
So there are specific industries. Yes, there's quite a lot of onboarding as well as like self-education. Like my team is fantastic because they are interested in things. And it's one of the things, like I say, when people are building teams, like the reality is anybody with a cell phone can do social media. Like that is how competitive the landscape is. But there's a very big difference behind like actively researching stuff, being interested in things, learning from competitors, learning from like not even competitors. Like there's a lot of learnings that we could take from like KFC, for example, and apply it in a different way to another client, you know, and vice versa. Like if we see like up in something, we're like, why has that done so well? We analyze it and then we see where we can apply those learnings. So I hope I am never a specialist because I always want to be learning something. I hope that I never am like, I know it, because on a daily basis, I am active. Like, I think it's maybe, and it's like not an arrogance, but I sometimes am like, people are going to find out that I am running an agency and how is she doing this? Do you know what I mean? And I always thought that was like a problem, like a confidence problem. But actually, I think it's a strength. But because I'm like always like I'm very guilty of like watching what other people in the space are doing and being like, oh, how would we do that? How, and then like, you know, like trying to improve and get better. That, yeah, I hope I wouldn't even call us specialists. I would call us like people who are giving it their best shot, being as creative as possible and learning all the time on how to do things better. And I think that's especially important in digital because things change so quickly. We don't really do a lot of like, you know, like what is that? I always get confused with above the line and below the line, but we don't really, if it's off the internet, we don't touch it. That's above the line. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, I don't know. I'm probably going to sound really dumb. But
no, these are all terms from like 35 years ago that I'm not entirely sure still apply, which really like feeds your point that things are changing so quickly that you can't just say, I know it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I should probably remember it, but I don't because we only work in digital. Like, I don't touch a billboard. I don't touch like shooting big TVCs, like that kind of stuff. So yeah, we have to always be learning because, I mean, like Google, I think it was 2 months ago, did a whole new algorithm change and it's fucked all of our current SEO programs. Like everything has to be changed. Do you know what I mean? So like for a year, you're tracking on and things are going and everything's working. And then you've got to get on a call with the client and be like, we're basically screwed. Everything has to change. And I'm like, you know, but clients don't like understand that, but things change all the time. I mean, what was it? A month ago, we didn't know if TikTok was going to be around anymore. We've put so much time, effort, budget, content, like our clients are killing it on TikTok and then it might disappear. Who knows what's going to happen? So you've got to keep on evolving. This is why I am fake.
It's I do love the little bit of exhaustion that happens just towards the end of that as you realize how much effort actually is required to constantly upskill yourself or not even just upskill yourself, just to maintain your current standards. I do love the way you've kind of taken imposter syndrome and twisted it on its head and made it into a positive, like I might not be the best in this thing, which means I really have to focus hard and not just assume that I know what's going on. So the other question I had though is since you have this diverse group of clients that that you've chosen to work with, one of the things you mentioned is that you want to work with people who are engaging, who are fun, who are willing to take some risk. Maybe how do you know when this is the right client and when maybe this is a time for you to back away from a potential deal? Like, at what point do you go, oh wait, this was a mistake? Is it well into the campaign or is it well before that?
So, listen, it's the first 3 months. I guess it's like dating, in the first 3 months, like, do you know what I mean? And listen, I am also by nature a people pleaser. I like everybody to like me. And I know that it's a strength because hopefully you're finding me very likable. But it's also a curse because I want so hard for everybody to like me that as soon as somebody doesn't, I then over-deliver, over, which is something that I must admit I've only become aware of in the last 2 years when and this is why I'm very lucky to have like a business partner that is very like the opposite of me. He's like, I don't care, like we do a good job and people need to respect us for that just as much as we respect them. So literally, I think we've only ever let go 2 clients, and it was honestly just because the one was just like, it was too much. We were spending too much time on stuff compared to the budgets they had, and the benchmark just kept on getting moved, and we were hitting all of our KPIs. And it's like, these guys are never going to be happy with us. Like, if we gave them, a viral Oreo dunk in the dark moment, like they would be like, cool, you got 40 billion views. Why didn't we get 50? Do you know what I mean? So that was the first one. And we probably should have let them go a bit sooner. And like one of my things that I failed at that is like, when my team was like, these guys are a problem, I was like, no, guys, everybody has, I should have listened to them a bit more, which was a learning. And then the other ones were just kids, like they were just rude to everybody from the start, like just not like not a nice person. Like you will not speak. I think on a human level, I treat everybody like my whole upbringing is treat people how you want to be treated. I will speak to a CEO the same way I give respect to the guy who rummages through my bins, and if you don't have that core thing where you can speak to somebody nicely, it's not going to be a fit for us. I would much rather make less money and have smaller bonuses for my team than have them treated badly.
I mean, I didn't even think that this conversation would kind of head in this direction, but something that I'm picking up from you, and I've picked up from quite a few other people that I've chatted to, is this idea of relationships in this business has become so crucial, and being really people focused is very, very important. I just wonder, how has that affected the way you grow your team? You mentioned at the beginning that you've doubled year on year the size of your team. You also mentioned that you tend to look for people who are interested more than interesting, even they're interested in the world around them. What other kind of personalities are you looking for, not just for your own team, but even in partner agencies or people that you're working with?
The most important is, again, like, it's really, but just be a nice person. Like our whole team has really good values. And I think even when we like interview people, our first chat is honestly just like, let's have a coffee, like get to know you. And I'll ask about I'm just like, cool, what's your upbringing? And like, because I think that's really important to know. Also, like, I'm very aware that like I'm white and privileged, and there's a lot of things that I don't understand. And there's actually a lady that I mentor, and I'm too busy at the moment, but like one of the things when I first started mentoring her is we worked together at the same agency, and I was like, you are always late for work. Like, work starts at 9. It's not hard to get here by 9, you know? And she said to me, and she was my junior, like I was who she reported to, like I was her HOD. And in that moment, she turned around and she was like, you're coming from a point of privilege, which as like a white person, like the typical response is like, I'm privileged. I understand, you know,
Me?
like
No, never.
I'm one of you.
I'm an ally.
Yeah. And she was like, exactly, which I am, but also there's only so much I can know, you know? She was like, I'm here at 9, but what you don't understand is I woke up at 4 a.m. Like I had to take taxis and then the taxis don't run and this and whatever. So I think it's super important to get to know people and get to know their upbringings, how they get around, the things they do on the weekends, the things they enjoy, the things that make them tick. Because as much as like I live, breathe, eat, sleep my agency, and I would love everybody else to, the reality is like until I'm at a point where I can start giving away shares and they're financially invested, like I want them to have fun on the weekends and I want them to enjoy things and be interested in things. And I think all of that sort of stuff is really important because I don't want the same people in our agency who just, you know, like all I do is go for runs and play paddle. Like that doesn't teach me things. It doesn't like teach the team. Like I want people who are super alternative. I want like hippies. I want like people who are into hip hop. I want like amalgamate. Like I want every single person from every single interest to be working with us, like when we grow and get huge, because that's how you learn things. That's how you do things differently. That's how you get content that resonates. It's how you write better copy. It's how you do all sorts of things that apply to work. But also another thing is I'm actually not allowed to be in interviews because I would hire everybody. I think everybody is fantastic. And anybody that has interviewed for me, like I only am brought in when Mark is like, this person's great, but I need a second opinion because I think everybody's a great. I'm just like, oh my God, what a lovely story. Hired immediately. And Mark's like, whoa, they're an architect. You know what I mean? Or whoa, this is a swimming coach who doesn't know how to type, you know, like it's so yeah, we just try and have like I can teach anybody anything. Like really, I need somebody who's got a passion for the internet because that's where we live, and people who have interests outside of work, people who do interesting things.
Can you imagine your inbox suddenly just being filled with job applications and resumes and CVs suddenly? Because that sounds to me like a great place to work.
I hope so. Like like the reality is our team is lovely and it's up to us to keep them because they're, we are small. I can't offer the same huge salaries as other clients. Like we don't have any clients that are paying us 2-3 million rand a month. So I need people who are compensated fairly because I do think we pay well. But I also know that it's up to us to make them, like I want people to skip into the office because they like the people they work with, because they spend the most time with them and be challenged. And there are days, like I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes I'm just like, Jesus Christ, let me I start looking for jobs on LinkedIn, and why didn't I become a landscaper, But yeah, like the reality is like, I want people to like the work and to like the people they work with. The rest can be taught, like that's the reality. I don't need huge CVs. I don't need like, unless it gets to like a point where we need more management and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I want people who want to learn stuff.
And I think just looking at all the research that's coming out of like the next generation of well-educated workers, I say we, they're the younger people. I'm realizing I'm not part of that group anymore.
I'm not either.
But even, yeah, but you and I think are the first wave of a generation who, you know, that salary isn't the be all and end all that makes up your decision of where you want to work. You do want to enjoy where you work. You want to like the people. And like you say, you doesn't have to agree with them. You don't have to agree with their politics or their religion or whatever, but can you go to work and not feel that anxiety in the pit of your stomach every single day because you're working with a complete douchebag of a manager? And maybe that's because we've experienced that and we know that we don't want that for the people that work with us. I totally did not expect this conversation to go in this direction, and I'm loving it.
Okay,
you know,
good. Yeah.
the dealing with, because again, even though it's the internet and it's online and it's digital, it's still people. We're still dealing with people. We're marketing to people. We're working with people, and sometimes they can get so lost in this business. So I love the fact that it's so people and relationship focused. But I do want to get some nuts and bolts with you, if that's okay.
Cool.
My audience would like hang me by the nearest pole if I don't actually do some actual hardcore digital marketing questions. So really what I am looking for is some predictions for 2025. I know we're deep in 2025 already. I feel like I'm still getting ready for 2024.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, exactly. But I do know that you do a lot of, especially on LinkedIn, a lot of writing about what you see coming, what you've currently, what you see working at the moment as well. But if you're a brand starting to think of your digital marketing strategy for maybe the second half of the year, a bit late now for the first half, but if you're working on your strategy, what are some of the big wins and some of the trends that these brands should be looking at?
Oh, God, I'm going to sound like every other marketer, but don't shy away from AI, because I think everyone at the moment, I mean, there's so many people who are AI gurus on my LinkedIn. I'm like, guys, it's been a year, like, let's chill. But I do think that as a brand manager, as a marketer in general, like if you aren't at least leaning in and learning, I think you also need to be humble. Like, I don't think you need to be an expert on stuff, but just like new platforms come into being, new ways of doing things come into being. If you aren't at least trying simple AI things on a personal level, you're going to be lost. Like, you're going to be left behind. One of the things that I think is super important is like how AI can help you personalize messaging. So, like, I think consumers in general, I know I'm guilty of this. I hope you are too. And I'm not just assuming things, but like, I want hyper relevant content that is served to me for my interests. I'm no longer okay with a hi member. I want a hi Justine. How, like, I want it to be like hyper personalized, and like being generic is not good enough anymore. Even when it comes to like websites, like, think of like how you can do dynamic content recommendations, and like, how are you using AI to optimize your paid media and to optimize your content? Like, these are all things you should be leaning into, but that's on the AI. I'm sure everyone's speaking about AI. I'm not going to focus on that. But if anything, like, if you haven't, like, I'm sure everyone does, like, pay for the ChatGPT version. Don't use the free version. Pay for the proper version and just play around with like integrating stuff, because if anything, that's going to make your day-to-day work life better, because it just makes things easier. And everyone always says, sorry, last thing, I'm like, let's stop talking about AI, and then I carry on for 5 minutes. But like, AI needs humans still. and I'm not scared of AI because I'm confident in what I do, and I know that it has its limitations. It's been a year of ChatGPT being maybe a bit longer, of ChatGPT being available. I, as a human, can already pick up when something's written by ChatGPT, so it still needs that human element.
Before you go on to, and again, we can talk about AI as much as the next marketer, but I think what you're saying about just playing with it is super important, because I know for myself, when I just think about all of the AI tools that are available, I become a little bit stressed out. Like my heart starts racing a little bit, because every week there's a new update to ChatGPT, and then Gemini does this, and then Claude does this, and it's starting to feel like, how am I ever going to keep up? But I think you're right. You don't need to be an AI guru. You don't have to be an expert. You just need to play around and see what things are interesting for you to use. Even with this podcast, I was very adamant that I will have my fingers in every part of the production process. I'm just doing this whole thing by myself. It would be ridiculous for me not to look at Gemini, what you can do for me, or even with this tool that we're currently using, Riverside, to help me with the editing. And it doesn't mean that I am completely removed from the content. It just helps me make it faster and better, and for you and I to have a much better conversation without me stressing about doing timestamps or keeping a list of the things. So I 100% agree with you that it's, again, don't have to stress about it. Just play around, just have some fun and see where it goes. But I cut you off. You still have some other trends for us.
Then the other thing that I don't think is going away anytime soon is short form video content. Again, I'll probably piss people off, but also know that I'm a digital agency. So I'm not trying to create these huge, I would love to, and I would love the challenge, but I'm not trying to be creating TVCs and put stuff onto TV. I want it to live on the internet. But short form video is not going anywhere. If anything, people's concentration is getting worse. We're basically all goldfish at this point, and the internet is our pond. I do, however, think that how we're doing short form video is different, and you need to be bold in that. We did a campaign recently with KFC where we started with short form video. It was an influencer campaign. And we started with short form video content, and then the content creator went live, and there was a hide and seek element to it, and you had to find the creator to get the vouchers to go to the KFC to get the product. So it's really about having short form content that does interesting stuff, because otherwise I'm just swiping away. So thinking of at its core, if I could say anything about platforms, use the built-in functionality of the app. Editing stuff off app is great and it looks amazing, but the best results the most viral TikTok we ever had, I think last time I checked, because it was sometime last year, sitting on 47 million views. And it was literally me in a restaurant going like this with my phone. Do you know what I mean? Doesn't have to be overproduced. It needs to look good, but we're used to, I watch everybody's Instagram stories. I don't ever think, oh my God, that was shot on an Android. No hate. No, I do that. But I'm I can see you don't have an iPhone, but I'm a Mac girl, so no hate. But I've never looked at any of my friend stories or my brands I follow and been oh, that's a really poor quality thing. I'm just what is happening here? And I'm either interested or I'm not. So that's the thing on short-term video content. And I think that goes into all the different aspects of it. As brands, as marketers, more storytelling. And I know that's nothing new, but I still don't see a lot of brands other than Checkers, who I love. I think they just kill it on everything in Woolworths, but they also have the budgets to be able to do it. Is they tell stories really beautifully in their content. It's no longer just that for Checkers, for example, it's no longer just I use an app and it gets delivered in 30 minutes. They've made the Checkers delivery driver the hero. they've shown him on a jet ski delivering stuff in Camps Bay. And I know these are all tactics, but it really just does drive that story of at its core, getting your groceries delivered really flippin' fast. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's great.
As opposed to other brands who just, hire an old rapper.
Same.
And I'm not gonna.
Actually,
I almost said the brand,
yeah.
but again, it's exactly that. It's you could spend a lot of money and you could be as flash as you could possibly do with the production. If it's not going to tell the story, if it's not going to if I'm not going to care about the person, and again, it always comes back to people, right? Like you're not making me care about a person or feel like I'm cared for. So I'm not even going to listen to whatever your messaging is.
Listen, I mean, if we had to, I personally liked it. I've now seen the comments and I'm like, oh, good point. That's cool. I agree with the comments, but I did enjoy it and it did make me smile. But I also realize I'm closer to 40 than I am to 20. And Rick Ross is a cool dude, or I've been putting my hands up for a long time because of him, But like this I think goes back to like big creative rollouts. I honestly think that would have been more impactful if just randomly he went on to like an Instagram live and was like just walking through a Pick and Pay, putting stuff in the trolley, being like humming, all I do is win. Like,
yeah, while he's looking at lettuce or something. That'll be amazing.
Exactly. And this is where like people don't get social still. Like there's so much thought into like this rollout and let's get this and whatever. Like those simple things are the most effective. Like I'd love to be a fly on the wall on that campaign. Like, did anyone ever think like, let's just give him the phone and go for it? Because that is what social is. It's where we consume it. It's where we, just tell him not to talk about religion, politics, and swear. Like that is literally the brief. Have fun, go shop. It's really that easy.
Okay, so I cut you off again. I think I'm probably going to end up doing that with every one of your points because they're all so good, and I want to engage with them.
You're not cutting me off at all. But like I pre-warned you, by nature I am a yapper, so you have to jump in.
Yeah,
otherwise I'll
look. We can pull the curtain back a bit with this. We book. I normally book like half an hour. I try to book half an hour with my guest. We've been chatting for almost 50 minutes, but it's one of these things where, if the conversation is flowing, let's keep it going. So no,
okay,
don't
cool.
say so.
Tell me if you need to be like, wrap it up.
No. I feel like I'm getting double the value that I was anticipating. Let's put it that way. So okay. So what's the next one?
On that last point, under promise, over deliver. That's what I aim for everything.
Nice. You are definitely doing that today. You are definitely nailing that.
The other thing that I think is super important, which also makes like marketers, marketing managers, marketing directors super nervous, is community. And everybody goes up, oh, my community. That's changed. If you go and look at just your Facebook, I don't really, I updated my profile picture today for the first time in like 5 years, purely because I got a nice picture with my dogs. But I go onto Facebook every day. And this is also where, as marketers, think about how you're using the platform. So there is this amazing community that I follow on Facebook called the Fat Wallet Community. And just for background, from Zimbabwe, we went through hyperinflation, money and understanding money was not something that was available to me because we don't even have a currency and didn't have a currency when I was coming out of high school. So there is this amazing community called the Fat Wallet Community, and there's a lot of them. That's just the one I'm the most interested in. And it is if I was an admin on that page and I had to share the insights of that with, say, let's use them again, Checkers, and be like, look at how active this community is. There are, and it's people posting anonymously because obviously they're asking for insight into finances, which is great. You learn so much when people have problems that they're asking experts or people who know how to solve things. But there must be like 6 or 7 people asking questions on there daily and 30 to 40 people jumping in to help them with no promise of an exchange of cash. It is just people who want to see other people thrive, and they know that South Africa and Africa in general, we have a financial literacy problem. Like, it's not taught in schools. Like, we don't know, unless you come from a family that works in finance or you actively are interested in it. Like, it's a problem anyway. And I think that's also something that brands need to look into, is like community-driven social media. And that's not just putting up a funny TikTok. It's about how do you convert those people in your comment section to a place where they feel they can freely talk with people like them. So it goes back to the age-old, like, we're not just buying gym clothes. I hate using them as an example because they do things so well, or at least they used to. But like Nike, you're not just buying a sneaker. You are building, like running things on, like meeting friends on Strava. You're joining running groups. You're making friends. Like, it's not just about a shoe. I like Nike. So like, I love a Nike running shoe, but it is more than that. It's about like Nike Running Club and the events that they used to put on. Remember those like Nike Run the Night runs? Geez, what a flippin' vibe, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the community-driven side of things. And then private groups, which I know makes every brand panic, but a private group where you can chat and allow your community to freely chat. And that means them saying bad stuff about your brand, but in a place where you can identify that it's a problem and keep them involved in how you're going to solve it, because that converts people into advocates. It's totally, and I know it's like, it's okay to get a complaint about your brand. It's not okay to ignore it, because that's a learning. And that's what a lot of people, they're just like looking at mentions and sentiment and whatever. Like, if you're not doing something to actively find out, and I'll use Nike as an example, like, God forbid all their shoes started giving people ankle problems. Like, if you don't know that from the people who use your shoe and you're not actively trying to fix the design, you're going to lose all of those people. And the only way people will feel confident to say that kind of stuff is if you have a private group where people are entered into and they are free to talk about your brand, good or bad, with a representative from your brand that has the power to say, this is insightful, thank you, we've noted this, we will work on it.
It does feel like, and this is kind of what I'm seeing a lot across the board is, you know, when we look at social media, it feels like a spectrum of like social and media. And for the last few years, it's been very more on the media side, you know, very Instagram heavy, everyone's making content. And I totally agree with you. I'm definitely seeing a swing back to the more social side of it. And maybe people are looking for, you know, communities that they've been missing out on in different ways.
I have a question for you, because I mean, this is the first time we've chatted, but you've come across my things, and I think it was back in the day, like OG Twitter, back in the day, old school Twitter. Now, and it's a question, like, how many people do you know off Twitter that you met in real life that have become your friends?
Oh, so people who weren't friends before, I would say zero, none for me.
Really?
Personally. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, but I'm not a very social person. I'm quite shy in public, so I avoid meetups.
Oh, so I never did the meetups because I always thought that was lame. And like intimidating, like, yeah. But, and I guess maybe it was the space, like I just moved to South Africa. I didn't know people, I bring this up because it goes back to community. Twitter, before it became the cesspool that it is, was a place where like you could connect with like-minded individuals, you know, like there was people who made you laugh. It was people who were talking about things you were interested in. And my first like South African friends are all people I met off Twitter, like all of them. And that goes back to like, I think that's what's missing in things is like the community side of it, you know, like you can use social platforms. It's not just about, if you look at it from an influencer point of view or a brand point of view, like you're giving people content, you're trying to monetize it because that's the goal for everyone. Like you don't just do stuff for free. Like everybody's trying to make money. It's the world we live in, sadly. But like, if you aren't actively trying to like connect with people, like you'll never convert them. And that's the same stance with your digital.
And I suppose it really does, you lose what I always thought was the real power of digital marketing, which was the two-way conversation. You know, yes, you could put an ad on TV and just shout at people, or you put an ad on a billboard and it's just shouting at people as they drive by. But the real power of digital marketing is like that, people being able to tell you, hey, I used to love your brand, but I had this experience at your restaurant 6 months ago and it was terrible. And being able to go, that is awful, let us fix this. So really that is where there's so much power.
Do you know who did, I forget, I may be butchering this, but who does this really well, and I think I saw it on LinkedIn, was the CEO of Ocean Basket. Like people weren't happy with things at Ocean Basket, and she basically was like, listen, I'm going to be here at this time. If you have grievances and there's anything you don't like, come through, come chat. And it's the same with like a client we worked with, Net Florist. Like they stuffed up on, I think it was not this Valentine's Day or last Valentine's, it might have been like 3 years ago. They stuffed up and people didn't get their flowers. Now that can make or break a relationship. Like there are some girls in particular, if they don't get flowers, like you out the door. Do you know what I mean? People take it very seriously. I'm like to my partner, I'm like, cool. Are we doing anything? No, rad, sweet.
Look, yeah, early nights.
But like,
we just have an early night.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. I've got Married at First Sight to watch. That's what I'm doing. But like the CEO of Netflix went on YouTube and publicly apologized. Like, was like, listen, we missed. There was stuff that we didn't expect this much. We weren't prepared. We thought we were. Mistakes happen. Like we're human at the end of the day. And that's what people forget. Like there are humans behind these brands, humans with ideas. We don't know the outcomes of things, especially when you're doing like creative stuff. I always feel so sorry for creative directors because you've got to come up with these huge ideas with like, yes, people do research and things, but you have absolutely no idea if it's going to land. And that's like somebody didn't win, no matter what. Do you know what I mean? But the idea was there.
I love that. And it would be great if that brand, I'm not going to name them, but I think everyone knows what we're talking about. But anyway, again, to what you're saying, if that brand came on, if the next campaign was, hey, that was a huge mistake. We took a swing. We missed. We obviously didn't think through that we were closing stores and we're spending all this money. It didn't work. Here's what we're going to be doing to correct it. The amount of sentiment that they would win versus what they would win much more than they ever lost in making the mistake in the first place. And again, it comes back all to the very beginning of our conversation, which really is, it comes back to people and relationships and treating people like people. So I love the idea that communities are going to be, or I was going to say going to be big, or really will continue to be big. And it's really just about how brands figure out how to be in those communities without completely ruining them.
Yeah, for sure. Please don't ruin them. But again, I think this is also leads on to what a great segue for the next thing that I think brands need to be looking into is like creator-led marketing. So again, I'm seeing it more and more. They're like, let's get a big name in an ad. That'll win people over. We've seen it with a whole bunch, you know, it's like Chicken Licken and David Hasselhoff in it. Like, I love that campaign, but like, if you had to look back to it, why are we okay with David Hasselhoff being in a campaign, but we're not okay with the other guy? Like, like it's a little bit like, anyway,
Interesting.
something to think about. But I think creator-led marketing and influencer partnerships are also key. And I know like influencers are the bane of my existence. Like I'll sometimes think about what I pay these people and then how they don't know how to do things, and it physically makes me ill. But the reality is like it works, but it's changing, because I know a lot of influencers who will go to the opening of an envelope. Do you know what I mean? Like they aren't really like, they aren't loyal to brands, and that's a problem. There's no regulation in the industry. So you can have somebody with 10,000 followers asking for 10,000 Rand, and you can have someone with 10,000 followers asking for 100,000 Rand. And it just depends on who you can afford. Like there needs to be regulation into that. I saw an article that SARS is really cracking down on influencers this year, and that makes me really happy. Anywho, not to rant about that, but I think creator-led marketing is super important, like really niching down and, using authentic people who aren't just the regulars that are part of every campaign, and also giving creators more brand ownership. So rather than saying to them, this is the brief, go and make it work, saying, this is the idea, how do you see it working? And how do you see this evolving? And how can you be involved? I think, like giving creators ownership of stuff, because I mean, it's hard to build an audience. Like I think we discredit also, like influencers, and then I say they're amazing. I'm like, contradicting myself, but it's really hard to build an audience, and they've done it. So they know how to do it. They know what their audience likes. And if you want to speak to their audience, work with them on what works best.
A big thank you to Justine for her time and expertise, and a big thank you to you for listening to this episode of the SA Digital Marketing Podcast. You can follow Justine and Punkystarfish on LinkedIn. Trust me, it's worth doing. They're a lot of fun following, so I'll put the links to that in the show notes. If you're listening to this on Spotify, please leave your comments in the app and I'll get back to you there. Otherwise, send your thoughts, comments, and questions to podcast@tmdigital.co.za. That's podcast@T for Tango, M for Mother, digital.co.za. And of course, wherever you're listening to or watching this, remember to subscribe, like, and review. It goes a long way to making sure other people get to hear and watch these conversations that I think are really useful for other marketers. Thanks so much. This was the South African Digital Marketing Podcast.